Never know, sometimes people come in at the last moment, but I'm glad you're here. You that are at home, thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll be glad. I've been looking forward to this morning. I think the message will be encouraging, and the songs are going to really fit with the message. So I've been anticipating that since I was putting the words to the songs into the presentation. It was already helping me to worship. So I hope you're glad that you're here. I'm certainly glad that you are here. I do want to encourage you in a moment when we are singing to pay attention to the words. The songs have been chosen deliberately. The words are very meaningful. It's another one of those Sundays that if you really engage with the words to the songs, you probably don't even need to listen to my sermon. Okay, you'll get the point, and you will live out the point of the sermon just through the music. So I hope that you will do that. We're looking at Psalm 19 this morning when we turn to the word for the sermon, and one of the verses in Psalm 19 is, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock," or my strength and my redeemer. Okay, so I would like for that to be our prayer this morning. And matter of fact, I'd like to ask you to stand now. And I'm going to do something that I never do. I know some pastors do this a lot in their services or in their sermons, but I don't usually ask you to repeat after me. But I want to do that this morning so that we will pray corporately that prayer. Okay, so I'll just say a line, and it's directly from the psalm that I just read, and just say it as a prayer to God. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord. And now, Lord, I pray that the way that we listen, the way that we interact with one another, everything that we do in the next hour will be pleasing to you, and the way that we walk out of here and live our day today, I pray that it will be pleasing to you. And I pray that the way that we live our week, this week, will be pleasing to you. May the words of our mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing to you, our Lord. Amen. Remain standing. Paula is coming to lead us. First time she's been leading with us, but we're grateful for that, so come ahead.
You speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship, so will I can see your heart in everything you've made. Every burning star a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I. So will I. God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. have spoken. All nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you said. Creating to nature so alive. I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you, so will I. So will I. If the stars were made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. If the wind goes where you send it, so will I. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. If the sum of all your praises still falls shy, then we sing again 100 billion times. God of salvation, you chased down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you created, the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to hide. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you, so will I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender, so will I can see your heart in billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I. Like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desire? You're the one who never leaves the one behind. Step down into darkness, open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you, hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship, here I altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all day, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for love's sake became poor. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. The splendor of a king, clothed in majesty. Let all the earth rejoice, let all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide. It trembles at his voice, it trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Age to age he stands, and time is in his hands. Beginning at the end, beginning at the end. The Godhead three in one. Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Name above all names, above all names. You are worthy of our praise, and my heart will sing how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you for singing. We'll sing again at the end of the service, and we're hoping that Paula will be back with us a few other times as well. But thanks so much for this morning. Like I said, perfect choice of songs as well. Just a couple things before we turn to the Word. Number one, a few of you arrived after we started, so if you didn't get a chance to get some coffee or tea, feel free to do that. If you need that now, it's not going to disturb me, so just make yourself at home to do that. Remember to pray for some people in the church. There are some people traveling. Ashish and Daya are traveling, I think, and Daya's expecting a baby, so there's that challenge. We have some people returning soon. Aaron and Deb returning pretty soon. Becky's still in America. If you know Gary Lansdowne, the American who's sometimes with us, Friday am I coming in and out? Friday he drove into Ukraine, I think. He and some others from here were bringing a bunch of stuff into Ukraine, not just to the border, but into Ukraine. So I doubt they are back yet, but pray for them. And then also next, if I can find this information, this week, Dulan is married in Sri Lanka. Okay, so that's Saturday. He says it's 9:30 India Standard Time, which is what time for us? 2.5 hours. Okay. So that's not too bad. We can do that. We can get up early Saturday because there's a live stream. Okay, in fact, it even says here the photo shoot will also be online. Okay, if you want to join that. And dress code is, let me see if, he has a cocktail semi-formal. Okay, so get up at 6 o'clock, get a shower, put on your semi-formal clothes, tune into live stream. It might be fun. I think at Ashish's wedding there, you could chat in the live stream. So we should fill that chat, during their wedding, and all of their friends will just wonder who in the world they know in Latvia. But anyway, that's at least pray for Dulan, and things are not going well in Sri Lanka, but there's some kind of government, and I think they'll be able to get married. But keep praying that all the paperwork will work out so that before too long she'll be able to join him back here. Okay, so just remember to be praying for one another during these days. There's a lot of things going on in the world and in our lives. Continue to pray for Alexandria and her sister, so keep that in mind. There is a WhatsApp prayer group where you can share prayer requests. I didn't put it on the presentation, but you can ask someone about how to join that or how to share prayer requests that come up during the week, because there's people in the body actually all over the world now who are very happy to pray for you. So keep that in mind. Okay, are there any other announcements? Okay, we're looking at Psalm 19 this morning. I've asked Dwight's going to come up and he's going to read that text for us. Oh, one other announcement while Dwight's coming up. For the rest of the summer through the end of August, we're going to be looking at some Psalms. In September, the next big series is starting in September. We're going to start looking at the book of Galatians. That's going to be a very in-depth study. Then after the new year, we're going to go through 1 Corinthians. So next year is going to be kind of the year of Paul. 1 Corinthians has enough stuff in there to make everyone upset and angry and so forth. So that'll be a fun study. But the next couple weeks, these are the Psalms we're going to look at. Next Sunday, we're going to be thinking about 2 Psalms of confession, Psalms 32 and 51. Then in 2 weeks, we'll look at 2 Psalms for when life doesn't seem fair, Psalm 37 and 73. So if you can be reading ahead, these are the kind of texts you could like read every day, maybe in the morning. Read Psalm 32, and then in the evening before you go to bed, Psalm 51. The next morning, 32. Next evening, so you can read those 6 times between now and next Sunday. But anyway, that's where we are headed. But this morning, Psalm 19. So come ahead, Dwight.
Good morning. If you have your Bible with you, you can open it in Psalm chapter 19. Once again, it's Psalm chapter 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language, where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices like a strong man to run its race. Its rising is from one end of heaven, and its circuit to the other end, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgment of the Lord are true, and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them your servant is warned, and in keeping them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse me from secret faults. Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless, and I shall be innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Blessed be the reading of the word.
Thank you, Dwight. It's always great to have Dwight read. He uses his voice. I appreciate that. Oh, I did want one other thing. Continue to pray for Isaac and family. The paperwork is going forward, so Isaac is hopeful that maybe in 2 or at least 3 weeks, Ivy and Josh might be able to join them. So, or John. But anyway, Josh. Okay. Hopefully soon they'll be back. So pray for that. They've had kind of a number of weeks apart, and that's not easy. So keep them in mind. Okay, Psalm 19. I don't know if you've seen this particular image, if this has popped up somewhere. This isn't from some film or whatever. This is the James Webb Space Telescope that has just recently begun to transmit pictures back to Earth. You've probably somewhere or another, the pictures that it has been taking have been showing up, and you might not have paid attention. It might have just looked like more space pictures. But this is a quite phenomenal piece of equipment amazingly fine-tuned that they had to create so it could fold up into a rocket and be shot up into space and then unfold, all kind of automatically, and begin to send pictures back. And it's fairly phenomenal. Now, previously, the best pictures that we were getting from space was from the Hubble Space Telescope, which I realize some of you maybe have no interest in this at all. But after you read Psalm 19, we ought to have an interest in that. But even, the Hubble telescope was in my lifetime. It might have been before some of you, but I'm old enough that, once upon a time we didn't see those images, and now we do. But now that Hubble telescope has been far surpassed by this James Webb telescope, where you can see a lot more. Okay, and this is, the images that are coming back are amazing people. And this image itself, most of those dots of light are not stars. They are galaxies that contain thousands and thousands of stars. Okay, and so people once again are getting an idea, even a bigger idea of how immense the universe it is, and seeing how much is out there further and further away. If there's billions of galaxies, with thousands or millions of stars in each one, it's amazing what is up there. Okay, it's really incredible. What humans could do to make that telescope is pretty incredible, but that telescope is nothing in comparison to the actual galaxies that are being observed from this telescope. And so one of the reasons, I've chosen Psalm 19 as we kind of do a few weeks in Psalms is because looking at these images, it just made me once again appreciate, first the universe, but even more the God who could possibly have made that. So the heavens declare the glory of God. Okay, and that's one of the reasons we should take an interest in the universe, in this earth and in the universe, because as the psalmist says, it communicates, it speaks something about God. Okay, it is a way of learning something about God. The skies proclaim the work of its hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, and even more at night. When things are dark and when you're living in a city, it might be hard to see some of the stars. If you really get out into the country and there's not a lot of, human-generated light, and you can begin to see more of the stars, it's really amazing, to be out there. So night after night, they display knowledge. There's no speech and no language, yet their voice goes out, their words to the ends of the world. The funny thing is, David, as he's composing this psalm, he had no idea of what any of that was. He didn't know that galaxies existed. He saw the lights, and he might not have known exactly what they were up there, but David, even, writing this and seeing the glory of God, he had no idea. He had no idea what was up there. For them, kind of the main thing that guided their life was the sun. So that's what David kind of puts into the next few lines of this poem. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun. It's like a bridegroom coming forth from his pavilion. You think of a proud and dressed up bridegroom, and they've anticipated this day, and he comes out and he's got all his followers with him. I don't know if Dulon will quite look like that or not, but that's the image that is being used, that David could use to try to communicate the glory of the sun coming up. It's like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is hidden from its heat. And part of the significance of that last line is that nothing is hidden. Okay, everyone experiences the sun and the power of the sun. If we didn't, we'd be dead. Okay, and everyone sees what's out there. Everyone who's ever lived, if they at least weren't literally physically blind, could look up and see these stars. And once again, whether they knew what all of it was, they realized that's pretty big and pretty amazing. Okay, I mean, what is it, 7 billion people on the face of the earth right now? But we sang about those 7 billion in that first song. Those billions were mentioned in that song. Okay, but they look up and they see what God has done, and they have a chance to understand something about God, and it's unavoidable for them. It's right there. It's above their heads, and they cannot really ignore. They cannot ignore the sun. All of us have to take into account the sun. We sleep according to the sunset and so forth, and seasons come according to the sun, and all of our lives are regulated according to the sun. It controls our lives whether we like it or not, and so that's why this is a powerful image for what God can do and how He's put these things together, and how the sun comes, it goes down, that's good, it's dark, we can sleep, it cools off, but we need the sun as well during the day, and it's like a perfect system that has brought about life. Significance of the first part of this poem, is that everyone can see this. It's unavoidable. Everyone experiences God in nature. Whether they recognize it as God or not is a different question. But they all see the same thing. They see these works. Hundreds of years after this psalm was written, the Apostle Paul will say, "Therefore they are without excuse." People are without excuse. God has communicated something to everyone. Okay, there is something of God everyone has had a chance to experience. Okay, even if some of us have been privileged to, let's say, a Christian family, where I heard about God from when I was a baby and didn't understand anything. Okay, that's a privilege, that's a gift. I'm grateful for that. But even if we haven't everyone experienced that, everyone can at least experience God through nature. So that's how this poem starts, with the works of God and how glorious they are, and how intelligent God had to have been to make this system to work like it does. Okay, but there's a limitation to that kind of revelation. Even though on the plus side, everyone can see it, on the negative side, it's possible to experience it without necessarily acknowledging God in it. I recently came across this little poem by someone 150 years ago that it kind of expresses what David was trying to communicate in this psalm. The earth is crammed with heaven. Even on the earth, what's up there? God in His heavens has filled the earth with signs of His presence, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees that takes off his shoes. Only the person, who acknowledges this is from God takes off his shoes in worship. Okay, it's there, and there's signs of God everywhere. Okay, in this room, there's signs of God. We might not see it, though. We might have to train our eyes. And only those who see it find joy in seeing God in that. It's interesting that the next line to this that is sometimes left out of the quote, earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God, and only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit around it and pluck blackberries. That's not a very poetic line there. It's like, what is that doing there? But it's making the point that everyone actually enjoys the benefits of this bush. They can sit around and eat the blackberries, and everyone enjoys the gift of God, but it's too bad they don't recognize it as a gift from God. Okay, and so most people, when they see the images from the James Webb telescope, they realize that's amazing, but they're going to miss God. Most people probably won't really see God there and ask themselves, how could this possibly be? How could this universe exist apart from some wonderful master worker who put it together? So that's why this poem, Psalm 19, goes on to make another point. So yes, the heavens declare something about God, but His Word declares even more. The law of the Lord is perfect. It revives the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy. They make wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right. They give joy to the heart. It's supposed to give joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are sure and altogether righteous. They are more precious than gold, than much pure gold. They're sweeter than honey from the comb. And by them is your servant warned. In keeping them, there is great reward. So here in the second part of this psalm, there's different words that more or less refer to the same thing, the revelation of God. And it starts off, the law of the Lord is perfect, but it's important that we don't think of the word law the way we often think of the word law. It's just like a bunch of rules. You know, sometimes we think of the Old Testament, and it's got the laws, it's got the Ten Commandments, and then there's a bunch of other laws, and it's like a checklist. I got to do this, and don't do this, and don't do this. Those are the laws. But when David writes this and people first heard this, they didn't think of a list of rules. You know, David is talking about the Torah, which again is not just the law. It's all the revelation about God. It's God's ways. It includes what God does. It includes how God explains what He does so that we actually understand God. The end is not to keep the laws, to follow all the rules. That's not the point. The point is to image forth God, to be filled with His ways, and for His ways to dominate our thinking. Think of it this way. We all know different areas of life where there's, a list of rules. Okay, so here's some beach rules. First, I say there's no lifeguard, so swim at your own risk. That doesn't sound good. It's maybe nice to have a lifeguard. No smoking, no open fires or fireworks allowed. Okay, I'm probably glad at the beach people aren't firing off fireworks all the time. That might, lower the joy. Don't remove or throw stones or rocks. Okay, that's reasonable enough. Children under 10 years of age must be accompanied by an adult. Okay. When leaving the beach, take your trash, chairs, toys, and noodles, etc. They should have said take your family, too. Maybe they meant that in the word trash. That's a joke, okay? Most of you didn't get that. Okay, that's not a bad rule. Sandcastles' holes should be filled in prior to leaving the beach. I don't like that. I mean, if someone builds a really cool sandcastle, then leave it there, for the next people to come and enjoy that sandcastle. No horseplay allowed on the float or beach. That's a American phrase, horseplay, just kind of playing around. I mean, that's a typical rule. That's like, don't have fun. Come to the beach, but don't have fun while you're here. That's no fun. Enjoy the beach, but have no fun here. No horseplay on the beach. No boats allowed on the beach or swimming area. No dogs permitted on the beach. Well, that's just stupid. Okay, dogs should be allowed. In fact, maybe people shouldn't be allowed, and just dogs. If you find a beach where it's just dogs, tell me where it is, and I'm going to go join them. Okay, so I don't like that rule at all. And then use common sense, respect the rights of others. Okay, but these are kind of a list of rules. Some of them kind of make sense. Some are a little bit arbitrary. Some beaches maybe don't have those rules. Some beaches allow dogs and so forth. But, there are places or areas of life where there's this list of rules. Okay? And, again, that's not completely unreasonable. Okay, but we can sometimes think of the Old Testament law as something like that. It's a list of rules that mainly focus on, don't do these things, or if you do them, make sure you clean up your mess, don't mess up life for anyone else, limit your fun and so forth. And we think of that's kind of what the law is about. Okay, but that's a bad image for the Torah. Okay, in the Old Testament times, that's not how they really saw their own law. That's kind of the way sometimes we want to use the law to kind of point our finger at people and say, do it this way. Maybe a better way to think about beach rules is this. I don't know if you're familiar with what's called rip currents or rip tide. Okay, on the beach, like on the ocean or sea, as the waves come in, the water comes in, somehow the water needs to also go out, and it creates these rip currents that sometimes can be very, very strong. And every year, some people drown because they get caught in this rip current. They're trying to swim back to shore, but it's stronger than their swimming ability, and it carries them too far out, and they can't get back, or often they panic when they're trying to swim, and then that just kind of hastens them sinking and drowning. I mean, it happens regularly. And so this tells us if you're caught in a rip current, don't fight the current. Swim out of the current to the side or let it take you, and then come around and so forth. And then for safety, know how to swim. Okay? I mean, there's not a rule on the beach that says if you can't swim, get in the water, but it's wise advice, If you can't swim, don't get in the water, maybe. That might be smart. Know how to swim. Never swim alone. Again, that's pretty wise. Don't go alone. If in doubt, don't go out. These are two different ways of thinking about beach rules. One is this list of do's and don'ts. The other is actually much more life-giving. It's realistic. It's simply saying, this is the reality that you will be confronted with. Okay? I mean, the rip currents exist whether you like it or not, and no one can make a law saying, let there be no rip currents. Okay? The reality is they exist and they're dangerous, and therefore, this is how you should live in light of that, for your own joy and safety. And that's what the Torah was. Not a list of rules, but it's a picture of what the world is really like, how it actually works, and how we can live wisely in light of that. Not a bunch of do's and don'ts, certainly not don't have fun. That's not a rule. Joy is a good thing. It's a gift from God. But it is a picture of this is how life works, and this is, if you do this, there are consequences. Think first. Okay, this is how God is, and if you're going to interact with Him, then this is what it's got to look like. Okay, because this is who God is, and this is how He works. So the Torah, the Old Testament, was meant to be holistic and practical. Okay, but it's still a little bit limited and potentially impersonal. Okay, it communicates more than just nature communicates. It's more personal than nature. In fact, one of the interesting things that happens in this psalm, in the first 6 verses, when it talks about creation, just uses the word God. These are the works of God. It's kind of the generic name for God. God created. In verse 7, when it talks about the law, it doesn't use the word God. It uses the word Lord or Yahweh, the personal name for God. The law is meant to be more personal. It's following the pattern of Genesis 1 and 2. Genesis 1, creation. God did this. Genesis 2, He creates humans. Lord, Yahweh, His personal name. So it gets more personal. But even, the law can be potentially impersonal. It's like handing someone a map, and saying, here, take this map and find out where you're going with this map. And I'm old enough that I actually, learned how to read a map. And I used to, sit in my car and drive, and I would have this map next to me. That's worse than texting and driving, I realize now. I'm driving and, for cars, they have this big road map and you're unfolding it or you're flipping pages and so forth. And, and then I would, because I'm, paranoid, I would also write down step-by-step instructions here, so I never got permanently lost. I would get temporarily lost a few times. So a map is helpful. But I would much rather, if I'm, let's say, visiting another city, have a personal guide. Okay? I would rather have someone who knows the city, who's going to walk with me. That's much better. In fact, sometimes it's like, I'm not sure I even want to make a trip if I don't know someone there. Okay? I don't want that high stress thing of trying to find my way. We were in Venice a couple of years ago, and it was a terrible time to be in Venice. It was August, it was crowded, and of course there's the narrow streets along the canals, and it's just packed with people, and you with the car you can use your GPS. When you're walking in a crowded city like Venice, where those guys back then didn't know what a straight line was. I don't know why they couldn't make straight lines in their cities. It's like old Riga, there's no straight street there. And so I don't know what happened there, but from current slide, there we go. So we're trying to navigate our way. We knew where we wanted to go. We didn't know how to do it. But then, of course, when you're traveling with your family, people need to use the toilet. So we're trying to find a toilet. And there's, up on the walls, there's like a sign, an arrow, WC there. So we're oh, good, it's close. And we go that way. No, it's not close. It's another arrow. And we're like getting lost in Venice, just trying to find a stupid toilet. And by the time we get there, we have no idea where we are. And we probably had forgotten where we were even going. I don't even know what we did. But those are the times when you kind of want a personal guide, someone who knows the city and is going to take you around. So creation communicates something, at least, about the greatness of God and the intelligence of God. And the Torah communicates something about the wisdom of God and even the love of God. Okay, but it's still possible to miss who God really is, to miss the heart of God. In the Old Testament times, that was what they had. They had creation and the law. And we are incredibly privileged to live in a time when we have received the fullest possible revelation of God. And so this is how Paul put it in Colossians chapter 1. He rescued us from the dominion of darkness. Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Step down into darkness to bring the light to deliver us from that realm. And you brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the real image of God, the clearest picture of God, more clear than any picture from the Webb telescope, even more clear than the Torah. Jesus, the Word of God. He's the firstborn over all creation. Here in that sentence, firstborn, it can sometimes mean first in time. Someone of firstborn, Elisabetta is, firstborn for Andres and Vinetta. She's the oldest girl. So firstborn can mean that. But back then, firstborn doesn't always mean first in time. It means first in rank. So when it says he is the firstborn over all creation, that doesn't mean God created him first. Okay, this is what certain other groups, for instance, Jehovah's Witnesses, will say, God created Jesus and Jesus created the rest of the universe. And they'll sometimes misinterpret and quote it this way, but that's not what firstborn means here, as we'll see in context. He's firstborn over all creation in that he is above it, he is master of it, he is Lord of it. I don't know if maybe Elizabeth also lords it over her younger sisters, I don't know, but that's the tendency of the oldest. But that's what's being said about the Son. He's above creation. For in him all things were created. Okay, he was not created himself, but he did the creating. It's through the Son that God the Father created. All things were created. The Jehovah's Witnesses, in their translation, sometimes put it, for in him all other things were created. Okay, that's not what Paul wrote. Okay, Paul wrote, in him all things were created. To make sure it's very clear, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. Okay, even spiritual beings, all of them were created. They're not independent of God, they're creations. All things have been created through him and for him, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Okay, those galaxies, they are still where they are and moving like they move in predictable ways because Jesus holds them together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. In everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him. Paul uses some loaded words there. God was pleased to have all his fullness to dwell in Jesus. That word fullness was used in other kind of philosophical and religious systems. There was kind of a thought system that eventually be called Gnosticism that kind of had this view that the created earth is pretty bad, it's pretty evil, and we want to escape kind of this physical universe because it's bad, it's tainted with weakness and sin. Somewhere way up there is the one true God who's all good and he created it. Okay, but because the one true God is all good, he cannot be responsible for this bad earth. And so between that God and this earth, there's all these other kind of layers of God, spiritual beings between the one true God and the earth. And the only way to kind of get to that one true God is you've got to go through all these other gods. Okay, that was one of the belief systems arising in Paul's time that was affecting the Colossian church. And the word that was used for all these kind of gods in between the one true God and the earth was sometimes the fullness. And what Paul is saying, forget about all that. It's Jesus. Jesus Christ alone. He's the one way, the only way to the Father. We don't need anything else, just Jesus. Just Jesus. Everything about God we can find in Jesus. Everything we need to know about God, Jesus reveals that to us. He's the clearest picture of God the Father, Jesus Christ. He is the Son. In the song, we talked about the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Spirit together. But Jesus is the one in flesh who reveals to us who the Father was. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. So here are some ways that God reveals himself. He reveals himself through nature, through the greatness of creation. And we should be able to get at least a little picture of the greatness of God and the intelligence of God by seeing what he's made. But then a little bit better and a little more personal, God reveals himself through the Torah, and the way I put it, through the Torah and the story. The story of God that we read in the Old Testament, where we see what God does and what he values and how he interacts with people. We learn about God in much more personal ways in the Torah. But especially and finally, the true Word, the real, absolute, final, total Word of God, Jesus Christ, the Son. He reveals who the Father is. And this is why people need Jesus, even more than the law. They need Jesus. People need to know who he is. They need to know Jesus. Then they'll know who God is and what God is all about. So the psalm ends, who can discern his errors? Forgive my hidden faults and keep your servant from willful sins. May they not rule over me. Then will I be blameless, innocent of great transgression. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. Let the words of our mouths, the meditations of our heart be pleasing to him. So what are the words? What are the meditations? How can we do this? And I just want to suggest, and you can take this kind of as advice, about how to flesh this out. But if we think about how God reveals himself, maybe this can be a good guideline for the meditations of our hearts and the words of our mouth. So first, why don't we enjoy the beauty of creation and everything that's around us? Look for God everywhere that you go. Look up in the sky and just tell yourself, that's God. God did that. And everywhere that you go, consider that there might be signs of God. Years ago, I talked about in the creation story how God is into diversity and creativity, and I suggested go to the market. In fact, maybe after the service, go to the central market, go to where the fruit and vegetables are, and just walk up those aisles and see all the hundreds of different kinds of foods, and just tell yourself, that's God. That was God's idea. That's just amazing, that creativity. Then if you have to hold your nose, go to the fish pavilion and see all the different kinds of fish. I mean, man, there's some wild fish in the seas. And just look at the diversity and just tell yourself, look, that's God. God did that. He made that happen. Even in a central market, you can see God. And go to a park and just sit on the bench, and instead of pulling out your phone, just observe people. I've already kind of talked about, I like dogs, and, at Verminestars, there's sometimes people walk their dogs, sometimes groups get together with their dogs, and I just love to see those dogs interacting, and sometimes strangers are talking, and dogs have brought them together. That's just a nice thing, that maybe God had something to do with that. And it might be a little bit harder, but it might be wise to train ourselves to see God in other people, sometimes even irritating people. Just to see the differences, the diversity, people who are very different than us that make, like me, very, very uncomfortable, but just to think, there's God, that's an amazing human being. And maybe that person made some bad choices, or maybe it wasn't that person's fault, but maybe he's fallen because of not his fault at all. Okay, but it's still an amazing human being who's in the image of God. That person was God's idea. Again, we sang in the first song, the one who never leaves the one behind. So enjoy the beauty of creation around you, and maybe learn to see God in unexpected ways. I kind of want to suggest an experiment. This might be a bad idea, but I want to try it. Here you have permission to use your phones, but just this week, as you're out and about, look for signs of God in all sorts of different things. Take a picture of it, and, you can post it on your Instagram or whatever, but if you want to put it on our Facebook group page, just do that. It'd be fun this week to have it filled with pictures of this is where I saw God, how I saw God in this person or in this up there or this here. And where we live, there used to be this girl, I think she was an artist, but I would sometimes see her waiting for a train and suddenly she'd bend down and take a picture of some little piece of nature that she thought was beautiful and took a picture of it. Let's do that this week, okay? Look for God. And it's, people like me who are a little bit prone to anxiety, it's hard to find God in the midst of that. It's a discipline. We need to make ourselves do it. Okay, but this is how the meditations of our hearts can be pleasing to God, by finding God. And then act in ways that honor God in His ways. Again, I put this in a particular way here, not just keep the rules. Okay, some of the Old Testament laws kind of still apply to us. Don't murder anyone this week, please. Okay, but honor God in the way that you act, in the way that you interact with people, just that show that He's important. Okay, part of that is just, living sensibly. Okay, part of the laws were given to help people to live in wise, sensible, healthy ways. Okay, live wisely, live sensibly, live understanding God's values so that we communicate them. And by the way, let's not point to ourselves as law keepers. Let's not use the law to say, here's a list of rules, and look, I've kept these rules. Okay, and also let's not use the laws to point at other people. Oh, this is the rule you've got to keep. Okay, let's not use the law that way unless it's your responsibility to someone, then maybe you might need to say, sorry, you got to stop that. But let's not be the people that are just stopping people from having fun and handing out lists of rules. Let's simply be the people who embody the wisdom of God. But then especially talk about Jesus and show His beauty. Talk about Jesus. Find ways to talk about Jesus. And this might be a little harder because it's a little less natural. It's a lot easier to talk about, images of the, James Webb Space Telescope and so forth. But if Jesus is who He is, He's the one person everyone needs to meet. And His name is the name people need to hear. Okay, and so let Jesus be important enough that we talk about Him, at least some. We can talk about weather and sports, and all of that is great, but all in the midst of our conversation, let Jesus be a part of that. Okay, come to know Jesus and appreciate His beauty and how amazing He is, so that you can talk about Him. You can talk to people about what He means to you. So that He might have first place in all things. That the words of our heart, meditation of our words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be pleasing in His sight. So let Jesus have first place in our thoughts. Let Jesus have first place in our words. Okay? Be some discipline. By the way, it's not necessarily easy if you're a pastor like me. I can go through most of my week. I can sit down and prepare a sermon about Jesus, and not necessarily really think about Jesus as a real living person. It's a danger for me as well. But let Him have first place in our thoughts and in our words. So Lord, I pray that this week indeed, what we think about, the way we think about things will reflect how amazing Jesus is, and the words of our mouths would reflect Jesus, and that you'd give us opportunities to say his name to people who need to hear his name. Amen. Okay, we're going to sing one more song.
Abide in me and I in you. A branch cannot bear fruit of itself. You are the true vine, and I'm thirsty to be just like you. And I humble myself in your presence. Holy you are, mighty God. And I humble myself to be like you one day and love like you did. So clean me with your word and make me new. I long to abide in you. Long to see your face one day when everything will fade away. But until then I'll run this race to glorify your holy name. And I humble myself in your presence. Holy you are, mighty God. And I humble myself to be like you one day and love like you did. So clean me with your word and make me new. I long to abide in you. Abide in you. Without you, there's nothing I can do. Without you, nothing in life seems true. So Lord, come through and show me what makes sense, so that I can make it till the end. Without you, there's nothing I can do. And without you, nothing in life seems true. So Lord, come through and show me what makes sense, so that I can make it till the end. So clean me with your word and make me new. I long to abide in you.
For introducing us to a new song. That's always good to learn some new songs. Thank you for being here. Try not to take off too quickly. Try to talk to a few people before you go, all right? Because there's a lot of beautiful people here who reflect God, okay? So don't miss it. Don't miss, seeing God in one another, at least for the next 15 minutes. All right? So have a great week. God willing, see you next Sunday.